Okay, well, give the intro and start it.
Alrighty. Alright, so hello everybody, and it is the whatever day of whatever month of whatever year, I don't know, and
I
I
think
don't
it's December 4th.
care. Body and
December
alright.
5th, sorry. December
December the
5th.
what?
December number 5, December 5th.
December the 5. What year are we again?
2016, the worst year ever.
2016?
2016. Time flies, huh?
5. What day is today? Monday?
Monday.
Alright. So yeah, time flies. And we're going to talk about time today in a way that you have never heard before, and in a way that you
Yeah.
obviously are not going to believe. But
Lucky
everybody,
you,
yes,
listener.
lucky you, listener. Everybody needs to get their voice heard, apparently, right? So,
That's what communism's all about, Sid.
I'm trying to find the guy. Oh, there he is. Communism? You think?
Satanism.
Yeah, maybe. So, that'll work. There's our guy. His name is Stefan Bachman, and he's going to answer the question: how does God exist outside time and space? Are you ready?
Sure.
Well, I wanted to do this particular video because it is an interesting topic, and I've heard a lot of people say that how can God exist outside of time and space? And the answer is actually quite simple, and that the answer is just not on our plane of existence. So therefore,
Pause.
time doesn't have the same concept or the same
can't find it.
impact as
That's the pause button.
if he were to be living in.
Pause.
Okay, listen. Right off the bat, it strikes the mind that he's coming from a very humanocentric viewpoint, like we're in a privileged position of indicating when existence begins in the universe, right? Of course, there was things that happened before man ever existed. That would, one thing objection I'd bring up. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
he's gonna make an assertion. He's gonna make
All right.
an unverifiable claim.
Our universe, or she, to be living in our universe. So I've done this little diagram, which I'll just show you. And, okay, so you can see.
Okay, let's talk about this diagram.
All right, let's talk about it.
The central part of this, I see a circle. That is the circle of infinity, I guess, the infinity of existence. Everything else right now, I don't know, but it looks like he's put a beginning of time point on the circle and a beginning and end of life point on the circle for some reason. The creation of the universe point. So I think he's really trying to find the beginning of a circle, which is impossible.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be his failure.
Well, what it looks like he's trying to bend reality around the God concept to be. It's sort of like, okay, God has to be in the middle. How can we test that, right? I don't know.
All right, let's see.
See how I've broken it up, and this is just a crude representation of how the timeline flows in our universe. So you got the beginning of time, which is in nanoseconds. So everything that happened in the Big Bang, it happened in that millionths of a second type thing. It's like what happened within the whole universe to particles reacting a certain way and doing a certain thing and basically doing its thing. These happen in very, very tiny seconds. So the beginning of time to the creation of the universe is a very short window, but it's all important when it comes to describing time.
Sure.
and obviously just after the creation of the universe to the beginning of life, so the universe has expanded, it's formed stars, it's now forming planets, it's now
Okay, pause right here for a
building
second,
the blocks for life, and
please.
this.
Okay, apparently Stephen's making the distinction between the actual beginning of time to the point where he could claim that the creation of the universe. I think there's a gap there where he's calling nanoseconds.
Well, exactly. He's claiming that there's a beginning of time, and he's made some kind of a claim about what happens before that, which I don't get it at all.
This
Just
happened
carry
in
on.
eons.
Let me go back a couple of. Let's see what he's claiming.
For life, and this happened in eons. So we're talking a very long period of time, immeasurable amount of time that
Infinity.
we couldn't even quantify with a calculator. So I wouldn't even bother. But
Okay, one second. Go
so-
ahead, pause, Sid.
Looks like he's pointing that red arrow of eon, saying this is the infinity of existence. Basically, that's what it looks like he's going to.
Well, one thing I want to bring up to our listeners is that they're always looking for a hiding place for the God concept. You know, the more that science finds out about the nature of our universe, the more they have to find a place to hide God, you know, because, you know, once we can ascertain that there is no God, they got to find a hiding place to put him. So he's trying to find a hiding place for the God concept, you know, somewhere within the beginning of time, I guess, in the creation of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saying that since, you know, we can't calculate this point, here's where God exists. I mean, you know, this is, you know, trying to find a hiding place for God.
Right. Carry on.
Yeah.
there we go. We got the beginning of life. Now, if you see God in the middle, it actually represents him or her being outside of time. So
How can you test that, Stephen?
I'm hoping.
Okay, how does he's within time, right? Over here.
Right.
This is within time, so that's not outside of time. Unless he's saying outside of time is if you're not on the line or something. It doesn't make sense either.
Well, like you said, there's a point on the circle. He wants to find some point on the circle.
Yeah, that's his first failing. You can't find the beginning of time on an infinite loop of existence, because there is no beginning. And
Like God is this special creature that can also exist outside of time, but we have no simile within our experience of our universe. What else is like God that can also exist outside of time? So that's why, you know, this thing is like hard to test, hard to swallow. You know, it doesn't make rational sense.
No, not yet.
Hoping this sort of makes sense to you. And then we go from the beginning of time to the end of life, so the end of life in the universe, which again is eons. We don't know how long that's going to be, and I guess we can never really be sure.
But we can
just be
infer it,
thankful
for sure.
every.
We can what?
We can infer the end of time because the universe is dissipating, entropy. So yes, we can do that much, Stephen.
Yeah.
Day we can, and after that it goes back to nanoseconds, where the universe basically implodes on itself again, and that.
Oops.
I've heard of this thing about the fluctuating universe, but I don't think anybody can prove it, Stephen.
That's been proved. That's not going to happen.
As far as I heard, the universe is going to heat death. It's just going to dissipate, and we don't know what's going to happen after that.
Well, no, what's going to happen is everything's moving away from everything else so quickly.
True.
That there's going to become a time where everything is so far distant away from each other that they won't be able to even be.
Yeah, heat death.
Noticeable. Yeah. But how the universe is going to, what the mechanics are of the universe contracting into that sort of, you know, back in time thing and back to this sort of singularity, I haven't seen any
theory or how exactly that's going to come about.
I haven't seen any scientific evidence or theory or thinking or whatever about that that points to it being a what do you call it?
Possibility,
Contraction.
plausibility.
That there's a possibility of contraction. Nothing that I've seen ever.
For every day we can. And after that, it goes back to nanoseconds, where the universe basically implodes on itself again and starts the whole cycle all over again. Now, the reason why I put God in the middle of the diagram is because what it's representing is that at any point in time, God can interact with that particular time period. There isn't a governing law that says
How can you test that, Steve?
what happens in the...
What?
How can you test that? I mean, it's an assertion, man. Anytime God can do this.
That's right.
Okay, how did you prove that God can do
He
that? I mean,
he's also begging the question where every time he mentions God, what's this God thing you're talking about? It's a concept. Okay, there's no, you're making a presumption that there is that God there. Now you're trying to explain how, but you haven't explained what this God is and
yeah, what's a
how it
substance?
got there and what its substance and blah blah blah. So good luck, buddy.
fourth dimensional. Are we fourth or third? I thought we were the fourth. Well, as far as I know, we're the fourth because you've got if you it's all about points of reference. So you got time, which is the first dimension. The second dimension is distance. I think, and I'm not a physicist, so I can't really explain that too well. I'm sure there is a video out there.
I don't blame him.
For you
People are
that
trying
would
to
explain
work
what dimension,
God, the reality
concept
around God, but
crap.
it's difficult because not even Einstein could even do it.
particular time period.
Right.
There isn't a governing law that says you can, what happens in the fourth dimensional. Are we fourth or third? I think. What the? It's all about points of reference. So you got, distance. I think, and I'm not a physicist, so I can't really explain that too well. I'm sure there is a video out there for you that would explain what dimension we're in and how it's sort of figured. Anyway, but the point is that God, being outside of time and space, can interact with any point in time. There is no particular reference that he needs to...
How do you test or prove that, Stephen?
Okay, how do we show that God is outside of space at this thing? 'Cause
right.
Where is space? He's got time, the timeline, but where's space?
Okay, just to tell the listeners, this assertion that, there's a video out there that can substantiate everything I'm telling you. But listen, if that was true, then the main department at the JPL would be a theology department, right? The main department at the CERN Super Collider would be a theology. There would be some use to, the Christian God concept or whatever God concept he's using, but there is none. I mean, there's no scientific applicability with the God concept.
Right.
That he has to wait for, if you will. The concept here is that basically everything that would happen and has happened has already happened. So our lives have already happened. We've already existed, and then basically. It's hard for me to wrap my head around this. Okay, so it's a lot of information to process. So basically, everything that can happen has already happened, but at the same time, it's happening in its own time. So basically, the beginning of life starts. It's happening now. Our time is happening now. The future is happening now. That's what I'm trying to describe to you, is that it happens, it's still happening. It's still...
Sounds to me like he's the B theory of time, sort of.
Okay.
Right?
it's still, it's like people in the past are being born, people in the future are being born, people now being born and living their lives. The reason why I'm getting to this point is because I'm going to get to time travel, all right, and also a bit of multiverse theory. Now, what that means also is that because everything has already happened, it means that potentially other universes...
Everything has already happened.
I don't understand. He said everything, you've already been born and you've already lived your life. Like it's all happened.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Everything that's possible to have happened has already happened, he says.
I don't know that.
So in other words, you've already... This is
the universe is already dead.
This is at least your second time around or something.
Are happening at the same time, in the same frame of reference, in the same methods. And it's why when people talk about multiverse, that's what they're talking about. That basically you make a decision. You have a choice. Well, you go one way, but in this alternate life, you go another way. And it doesn't mean that you yourself are going to go down that path. It means that someone else that is you is also going to go down a different path and have a different set of circumstances happen. So I hope that helps with that. We'll get to time travel that basically mathematically time travel is possible. Okay, so
how?
You would probably sit there and go, well, no, it's not. You know, if time travel is possible, why aren't we seeing people traveling in time now?
Is that a question that anybody's ever tried to ask?
How can we travel in time? I mean, like we can, go fast.
Firstly, he said that everything's already happened, so the future and the past and everything is now. Okay, well, let's just see. Maybe I misunderstand something.
Well, they might be, but we don't know about it. And some of the interesting things to consider with the time travel is the Doppler effect on time itself, because obviously, with the expansion of the universe, the Earth and the Sun and planets, we're all moving. We're all at a different point of reference every single day. So if we were to build a machine that could actually warp reality around it or warp time, which I don't know how that would even be possible, but if such a machine could even exist, it would need to be able to calculate the exact point of reference each time, for each day of the Earth. So if you wanted to go back in time, you'd have to know exactly where the Earth was in that period of existence. And that's where I think you don't want your time machine to be dropping in the middle of space or dropping in the center of a mountain or something like that. You need to know the exact point of reference where you're gonna land, if you will. Because I guess a time machine doesn't really move. It warps the world around it and basically lands at a point of reference in time where the computer tells it to. So, yeah, I hope that really sort of gives you an idea when they talk about, God being outside of time, and also just for fun, looking at time machines. So when people talk about traveling through time, it gives you an idea of what it means to actually travel through time and where you would land and what would happen. So I just think these are interesting topics. I mean, it's one of those things, like it's interesting to talk about, I guess.
Okay.
So maybe.
Okay, we'll keep going. We're almost done. I'll go ahead and epilogue once he finishes.
Universe, there is another version of you that is king of the world. I mean, When we're talking about multiverse theory, these are all possibilities, and even though they're happening outside our time and space, doesn't mean that they're not happening. And that's something interesting to consider. So, I don't know what that says about the world, but there you go. But anyway, so peace out, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye.
Well, that was kind of enlightening.
Okay, you want to go first, and then I'll epilogue.
No, you take it away, man.
Okay, well, 2 tracks here. We had God and we had time travel, okay?
Right.
The thing is, like, there is a practical use you could see to try time travel, right? One wants to time travel in order to gain an advantage of a situation or to remedy a situation, right? You want to go back in time and kill Hitler, or you want to go forward in time and learn who won the Super Bowl so you can go back and, bet on the winner, right?
Right.
There's some practical application to time travel, all right?
Right.
Now, the God concept, sure, you want to pray to God to gain, the same thing in a way. You want to pray to God to gain an advantage. You want to, be buddies with the creator of the universe in some form, please God, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that the God concept is like an older concept than time travel, because I would say relatively, the physics of time travel have come, in the 19th century. Let's say, what's his name? Who's the guy who made all the fantasy? Arthur Conan Doyle. You know what I mean? Jules Verne.
Yeah.
Those type of guys. The thing is that right now they use science. Obviously, we're watching here is a place to hide God, or to say that there's some substance to the God concept.
But there was so many
and
things missing from his, from his diagram.
Okay.
He put, like I say, he put God, and he showed how God is outside of time, but he also placed God outside of space. But on the diagram, he didn't show how God was outside of space.
Right.
So.
Well, I think what Stephen wanted to say is that there's some point in the circle where, we can't imagine, but God can be there, right?
Okay, but then he also goes on to talk about multiverses, and when you come to multiverses, if every universe is a circle, then does every universe have its own God?
Right. It's a good point. I mean, the mechanics of God are wondrous. It's fantastical. You could do anything with it because it's just
you like.
concept.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me ask you this, Sid. Okay, what use is the scientist that just sort of sits around and thinks up shit to stump science? You know what I mean? There's no use to that scientist unless he figures out some sort of practicality towards his theories, in this hypothesis. The scientist thinks all day of how to work God into our reality, but unless he comes up with some way of testing it, proving it, I mean, there's no use to that.
Well, it's tough to predict what will be useful and what won't be useful.
So you think that's worth it? A guy just sitting around thinking where God can exist?
Well, no, it's not worth that, because first you have to think how God can exist, and if so, where, because you don't see him.
Right. I mean, the reason that there is this God is to gain some sort of advantage, some sort of interaction with God.
Right. So I don't.
Okay, did you think Stephen befuddled himself there? I think he did. Halfway when the video was done, he was like trying to explain this stuff, and then he said, "I'm not a physicist," and I was like, "Well, Stephen, even the greatest physicist of all time couldn't figure out how to work God in."
Physicist, God, in the same sentence?
Like Einstein. Let's say Einstein put it upon himself. Okay, I'm going to figure out where God lives. I mean, the guy, even him, didn't have time for the God concept. He thought he had more time for things that actually existed than wasting time on the God concept.
Right, because the God concept, again, it's just a concept that doesn't change over time if you don't talk about it. If nobody talks about God for the next 1,000 years,
right,
and then in 1,000 years starts talking about God again, it'll be the same. It'll be the same shit. Same attribute, same the same woo woo. So all you God believers, I want you to put down your egos and your faith and your beliefs, and embrace reality. Once you do, I promise you will love it. Trust me.
Trust it.
Trust me, you'll love reality. Well, do you have any other videos you want to review?
Well, I only got cooking videos and tranny videos. That's the only one that really had some atheistic substance to it.
Well, neither of those two subjects are ones that I care to spend much time talking about because
Right, trannies, food, or
yeah,
weightlifting.
unless we've got a chef or an actual tranny activist or whatever
Right.
to actually talk to, then
But yeah, well, we'd like to thank Stephen for his video. Thank you for your time, Stephen. Keep cranking out them videos.
yes,
We'll review
Stephen,
them.
come on, we want more. We want more stuff to review, more stuff to look at, more stuff to
Clarifications, corrections,
laugh.
whatever.
I mean, not laugh. All right, so that was the review of one of Stephen Bachman's videos. Please, please share, like this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel, and donate to my PayPal.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? What the hell? Thank you very much for watching. This is Sydney
Have a
Winston.
good one.
On December the... Ooh, I didn't put the date up. It's 5th of
5.
December 2016.